Okay, welcome back. So, as I showed last time, I've got the wiring loom all soldered up, and now I've plugged in the peripherals, so the GPS, put antenna on the tracer receiver, plugged in the VTX, put on a antenna, very important that you don't run the VTX without an antenna, and plugged in the camera. And so, moment of truth, plug in the battery. I always find this very disconcerting because of course you've got quite a lot of expensive electronics here, and if you've wired something up the wrong way, it's easy for it all to go up in a puff of smoke. I haven't actually done that yet. I seem to have been careful enough, but always the moment of truth is a bit worrying. So we're going to plug it in, and bingo, lights. Whoops, lights. So we've got obviously power on the flight controller and the ESCs, which we saw last time. Power on tracer, which is great, and you can see the VTX flashing away there, so power on the VTX as well. No lights on the camera, so we can't tell that. So before I start to configure this, there's a couple of things I've got to do. So the VTX comes, the default comes, I'll just show you here on the manual. So the default for the VTX for control is smart audio. You can see that there, and we want it in CRSF mode. So the first thing I'm going to do is put it into CRSF mode. There's no way of doing this other than manually, and this is another reason why doing this without it all mounted in the copter is just a lot easier. It's a lot easier to get at the buttons. And so what you have to do is power it on, hold the button for a certain number of times, and we're looking for 6 red flashes, and then CRSF is 2 blue flashes. So I'm going to power this on. You see that's flashing, so I'm going to hold this down. I think it's for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. And then you can see it's in 1 red flash and then 1 blue flash, so that's the first one. So I'm going to press it again. Now it's 2 flashes. Oh, hang on. No, I'll just change the channel. So we're going to go back round to lots of flashes. Okay, so there we're back to 1 and 1. Right, so I'm going to hold it again for 3 seconds. There, 2 flashes. Right, hold it again for 3 seconds. 3 flashes. Hold it again for 3 seconds. 4 flashes. Hold it again for 3 seconds. 5 flashes. Hold it again for 3 seconds. Oops. 6 flashes. 3, 4, 5, 6. The blue is 1, 2, which is 2. And actually 2 is in CRSF mode, so the manual is lying there. So I'm just going to okay, leave that, and then I press and hold to save. So press and hold. There we go. And then it prints out the control again, and we're looking for 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, and that's what we want. Okay, so that's configured correctly now. Brilliant. for Series F. Okay, next, and it's possible, so TBS are very, very clever, so their stuff seems to auto-configure itself, so it's possible that because this is plugged into the CRSF port, or a CRSF port in the tracer module, that it detected that and so it's automatically switched to CRSF. It wouldn't surprise me if that's what's happened here, but who knows. Okay, so next thing is the camera. I have to configure the camera. So this is the Joshua Bardwell edition. The Joshua Bardwell edition has UART control, and if you go on the website, you can see here in very, very, very small writing, what it says is by default it comes in joystick control mode, and to switch it into UART control mode you have to short the two RX and TX pins, power the camera on, and then wait for it to switch, I believe, and then power the camera off again. So this is kind of much more complicated than this one. So you've got to basically, to see what's going on, you have to either wire this up to a monitor, or wire it up to a video transmitter and look in your goggles and see what's going on and short the thing. And yeah, okay, so it's quite complicated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unplug this, and I'm then going to disconnect, just using a little pin to pop these up very carefully, disconnect the RX and TX pins, and then I'm going to use one of the spare wires from the ESC loom, which is the same size GST connector. I'm going to use one of those to short these two pins, and then I can power it on, see it in my video transmitter goggles, and hopefully switch it to UART mode. So I'm not going to make you endure that pain, so I will pause and let's see whether I can be successful with that. Okay, welcome back. So there were a couple of minor issues with my plan. One was that the JST connectors for the ESCs are not quite the same size. They're the same pitch, but they're slightly longer, so they won't actually go all the way into the camera housing, but that's okay. They go in enough to make the connection. And then quite satisfyingly, what actually happens is you power it on and it switches mode, power off, power on again, it switches mode, so it doesn't just keep flip-flopping back while you're watching. It does a switch on, power on, and then powers off. So if you're really confident, what you can do is short it, power on, power off, and you should be done at that point if you only do it once, and you wouldn't have to look at the VTX or anything like that. So that's a possibility. The other slight flaw in my plan was, you can see on the manual here that the default band is A, and I actually use Fat Shark goggles and Airwave most of the time, so I had to switch the VTX into Airwave band, and then I could see everything beautifully and I could switch it over. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is make sure that the TBS units are configured correctly. And so I'm going to I'm using Agent X for this, so we'll bring Agent X to the front here. And then I'm going to plug in my transmitter. So here's my transmitter. It's got a tracer module on the back, and I'm going to plug the USB-C into it. And we should then see on Agent X the Micro TX. So there we go. That's the one I've got. Okay. And the first thing I'm going to do is going to bind. I need to power on the receiver first, so I'm going to power on the receiver. Get it, receiver powered. And the first thing I'm going to do is bind the TX to the receiver. I assume that's not here. Okay, so we'll bind this. And I'm running 607 on my TX, and clearly the tracer module I've got is on a lower version, so I am going to update the RX. Hopefully. Let's see what happens. So I think that's not working. No flashing lights on the receiver. No. Okay, so let's try this again. Off is bound, so I'm going to do that. Power on again. There we go. Oh, it thinks it is actually already updated. There we go. Okay, so it thinks it is already updated. And now I get the configuration screen. And I'm going to switch it to 12 channel mode because we support 12 channels. I'm going to turn off RC by Mavlink, and I'm going to turn on the battery sensor, although I have to say I've not really used that much. And then the important bit is the output map. So output map 1 and 2 is TX and RX for CRSF. So those are the main, you can see here, the main wires going to the flight controller. These are outputs 1 and 2, and we do want those to be CRSF. But then we also want 3 and 4, which is connected to the video TX, to be CRSF as well. So we're going to switch this to CRSF, switch this to CRSF. And then these two I don't really care about. Now, interestingly, it selected it this way around, RX-TX, and that's possibly because the TBS module has auto-detected which way is right for communicating with the VTX. So that looks good to me. I'm not going to fiddle with the channels. And I think that is good. Okay. And now, and we can also see the Unified Pro here. Now that we're communicating correctly with it, still thinking about whether it's configured or not. Here we go. It's configured. Data port is CRSF, which we had already checked. There's the band. Yeah, I'll just see whether this is. So I'm actually going to update the firmware for the VTX because we're going to use CRSF control, and the firmware, we want the latest firmware. So I'm going to update that. There we go. He says hopefully. No? Okay. I have to say this is sometimes my problem. Sometimes these things seem a little bit flaky. Settings, firmware, update, update. No, okay, it's not going to play ball. I'll try that a bit later. Okay, so SiriusF is all configured. So what I'm going to do next is switch to Mission Planner and start configuring the devices. So I'm just going to pause this. Alright, so I've got it plugged into the USB. I'm going to connect the USB. There we go. And I'm going to connect Mission Planner. Oops. There we go. Okay, connected. And then I'm going to go to the serial port definitions. So if you remember, we had serial 8. So let's switch to the browser here. So you can see that serial 8 is what, sorry, UART 8 is what we use for ESC telemetry, and that maps to serial 5. So what we're going to do next is configure the other devices. So the first device is CRSF, and that I've wired up to UART 7. And we can see that UART 7 is serial 1 here on this page. So back to Mission Planner, find serial 1, and serial 1 we want protocol 23, which is the RC input protocol. We don't need to set anything else. The baud rate should be set automatically. Options don't need to change. So I'm going to write that out. Okay. And then the next one is the GPS, which is on UART 2. So back to our little map here, and we can see that UART 2 maps to serial 3. Okay, so back to Mission Planner. And we'll find serial 3. Serial 3 protocol is already GPS 5, so that's great. So we'll just leave that at the defaults. And then the camera, back to our browser. The camera is on UART 1. And UART 1 is this one, which maps to serial 2. So back to Mission Planner, serial 2, and the protocol we want is 26, which is the RunCam protocol. So we're going to write that out. And then the final thing we want to do is enable the GPS. Okay, so the GPS actually is already enabled. So the one thing we're going to enable is the RunCam device, and that means setting the type. And we're going to set that to split/RunCam with UART control, which should be the type of camera that we've got. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is power up, reboot and power up the flight controller, and we'll see where we are. Disconnect Mission Planner, disconnect the flight controller, power up the flight controller. No, I'm going to do that last, so I'm going to first power on my radio receiver. Radio receiver's on. Power up the flight controller. Receiver is bound. Connect USB. Connect mission planner. There we go. So let's see what messages we get. Alright, so GPS detected, so that's good. GPS is enabled, and CRSF detected as well. Perfect, so that's enabled as well. We've got a compass detected, so that's perfect. And if we go to the setup screen for radio calibration, there we go, perfect. Radio calibration is there. So I'm just going to calibrate the radio now, just so it's done. Okay. So many switches on this thing. I think I missed one. 13 and 8. I think that's 8. I know we've only got 12 channels at the moment. We need CRSF V3 for 16 channels, but since we're running 4.1, we won't get that. So that is, oh, and you're perfect. Okay, all calibrated. That's great. Okay. And then back to the setup, and just have a look at the compass. So the compass is detected, QMC 5883. I'm not going to calibrate that because it's not in the vehicle, so there's no point in calibrating it right now. Yeah. It looks like we're good. What I don't see is the run cam activation. So let me try that once more. I'll try repairing it once more. We'll see whether we get the camera. All right, so I did actually check that with nav proxy in the end, because what I thought might be happening was happening, which is that the runcam initialized message shows up really early in the boot sequence, and so unless you're really quick, you can miss it. Difficult to capture, and especially with mission planner. So I fired up nav proxy, rebooted, and lo and behold, the runcam message showed up, said 5 key OSD, which is exactly what we want. That's exactly the type of runcam that we've got, and that is perfect. So let's see what the GPS has detected. Let's see whether we get any. See where the latitude and longitude show up. Longitude. Yep, there's something there. Yeah, and it's detected that I'm in the UK. So perfect. We have a working GPS, we have a working camera, we have a working radio receiver, and a working VTX, which is great. So we're sort of now in a position to assemble these into the frame itself.